that the sun shines down its power to all the world and makes the wind blow strong as it will. I wonder how gentle rains can fall upon the land, so lovely earth can stay lovely still.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Energy Week. Welcome. This is our 341st show.
341.
341, Energy Week with me, George Harvey, and the astonishing Tom Fennell.
In the flesh.
In the flesh. Oh, man. And I want to ask everybody to contribute volumes, loads of money to BCTV and tell them that it's for Energy Week to keep going.
Are they getting any?
We haven't got anything in the last week. We're about 3/4 of the way there, and we've got until May to get there.
Well, okay.
Whatever it is, I don't know. I'm not terribly worried about it at this point. You know, if we didn't get any more donations, I'd come up with the money myself somehow. But the way you donate, if you want to help the show, is go to BrattleBoroTV.org and go to the bottom of the screen, I think is where it is, and click on Support Local Broadcasting. And then you can, the best way to give, I'm told, is by PayPal, but you can also donate. And these donations, by the way, to BCTV are tax deductible. People can make donations to my blog. They're not tax deductible. Right. But the donations to BCTV are tax deductible, and you can go down there and donate. And then when you do, put in a note saying this is for Energy Week, and we will be told that we're that much closer to our goal.
Well, there's community TV stations all around the country, really, but all around Vermont.
Yeah.
And they had been financed by contributions from the cable TV industry.
Yep.
Which can't afford anything like that.
No. Yes.
And
well, cable TV is in trouble now, I think, because of the internet.
Because of the internet.
Yeah.
They could very well. And trouble is relative.
I suppose it is.
But in any case, what is happening in Vermont is the community TV stations like our own are all looking at a bleak future because they don't have the revenue coming in that they did.
Yeah.
And they're a community resource that most people take for granted because they've had it free for years.
Well, you know, the BCTV covers the select board meetings and so forth for all kinds of things.
It covers a lot of important stuff for the town.
And then in addition to the important stuff it covers our show. Okay. I should tell everybody the material for this show comes from my blog, geoharvey.com. I just couldn't figure out a better name than that, so that's what I called it. geoharvey.com. And
very clever.
Yeah, very clever. I used the name because I figured, I'll change it later if I don't like, when I come up with something good, can't change it. So anyway.
Change it to George Henry.
Huh?
Change it to George Henry.
Yeah, right. Anyway, the material that we're going to try to tell you the date at which it appeared on the blog. You can go there and look for articles that you find interesting and click on the links there, and it'll take you to the original article so you can read it for yourself.
Well, I usually poke up around now and say some of these things are pretty interesting.
Some of them are
worth looking up.
Absolutely.
Some of them are definitely worth reading.
Yeah.
I'll try and call that to your attention.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes I forget things. But I'll try and call them. There's always one or two that are worth looking at.
Well, actually, I think all of them are worth looking at, but there's always a bunch that you can really get some stuff out of. Okay, you want to launch into this?
A pretty good source. And,
right.
What's that?
Clean Technica?
Clean Technica, yeah.
Okay, we've got an item to start with that came from Renews. Renews, by the way, has two types of articles. They have the type that I always reference, which is free, and then they have premium articles that are only available to subscribers. But we have the free ones, and they're pretty short, but they say what they're going to say. So here's one from
I'm going
Renews.
to bring up a picture here.
A picture, there you go. And what do you got for a title, Tom?
This is the Haliade X prototype. Stands tall in Rotterdam. And there's a picture of the Haliade X, which is by far, right now, the largest
wind turbine in the world, and it's hard to get an idea of how big that thing actually is. But
even if you give them the numbers, and I will right now, it's 850 feet high.
Okay.
And those blades are 350 feet long.
So the blades you see in this picture are they're a little bit longer than the length of a football field. One blade is a little bit longer than a football field, including the end zones.
Yeah.
Okay, let me read the synopsis. A 12 megawatt Haliade, I don't know how to pronounce it, X wind turbine prototype has been installed in the Dutch port of Rotterdam by GE Renewables. The 260 meter tall test turbine, which is next to SIF's Maasvlakte yard. You know, I don't know. Dutch is difficult to pronounce because some of the letters just don't sound.
Well, like if it's two A's, it's pronounced A.
Oh, is it really?
Yeah, it's long A.
Oh, okay. Well, so this is Maasvlakte or something like that. Gouda, the cheese.
Yeah.
Gouda. Okay. Will be energized shortly. GE expects to complete type testing the new platform by the end of the year. They're going to test this thing by the end of the year. I got news for you. They've got these things for sale, and people have been buying them already.
They're building them right now.
Yeah.
There's 3 of them are set to go into the Atlantic coast off of Virginia. And it's about time.
And it's about time.
Well, I got a couple of things here. It's 260 meters tall, which I mentioned is 850 feet high. That's what, you read that already.
I didn't say it was 850 feet.
This is a prototype. And they're testing the prototype, but as we already mentioned, they're building these already.
Yeah.
And they've got orders for them.
Yep.
Okay. GE has orders for the new machine at the Doggerbank in the North Sea, and at the Skipjack project off of Maryland, and the Ocean Wind project off of New Jersey.
There you go.
And the ones down in Virginia.
And by the way,
looking good.
The wind turbine in this particular case, the one that was put up for test, is providing the shipyard with energy.
Yeah.
I mean, they're going to make the energy. It doesn't make sense just to throw it away.
They're looking to test it, but if they could sell the energy, I mean, they're ahead of the game.
Yeah.
And it's hardly subject to much in the way of transmission fees. About 30 feet. So
I don't know. Anyway.
Well, we got another one coming up here.
Okay, this is from Canadian Underwriter.
See if I can
I
get
think
this.
that may be a publication that I have not used on this show before. But by the way,
I wouldn't bet on that one.
The news that we're reading now is from Thursday, October 17th.
Well,
so
it's
Underwriter.
about economics, and it's called Another Insurer to Withdraw Coverage from the Oil Sands.
Starting next year, Axis Capital Holdings Limited will stop writing new insurance and facultative reinsurance for oil sands extraction and pipeline projects. The insurance industry has been warning for years about the consequences of global warming caused by greenhouse gas emissions. And I've mentioned this before. I think I should mention it now. The cost of insurance as a result of climate change is just growing to outrageous limits.
That's what they're doing right here. They're trying to avoid risk by simply not insuring these.
By not insuring. And I think that, you know, I have said, I did a study of insurance in the United States for flood insurance, which was fairly easy to do because in the United States, flood insurance is a guaranteed program, guaranteed by the federal government, because there was a really bad hurricane in the 1960s. Yeah. And the insurance companies went to the government and said, you know, if we had 2 of these in 1 year, we'd be out of business. So the
government's in trouble with that program.
Well, in 2003, a new law was passed that said if you make 2 claims on a property within a 10-year period, you can't get it anymore. So whoops, yeah. Anyway, the thing that I found was that from 1977 to 2015, if you count for inflation, increased population, which means you've got an increase in the number of properties in use, and then also the increase in the value of land and property relative to the value of the dollar, I would expect that the cost of insurance would have gone up by a factor of 5.5. But it didn't. It went up by a factor of 47, and the reason for that was because of increased
50,
flooding.
Isn't it? It's like 10 times more.
Yeah, it's because of flooding. It's because flooding is getting worse and worse.
Duh.
Well, but it's not just flooding. It's farm insurance. It's insurance for fire in places like California. How is the insurance company? How is the insurance industry going to deal with fire after fire after fire, which wipes out an entire community?
Yeah.
The insurance industry has long been...
They never predicted that kind of exposure.
Well, and now we've got PG&E saying, I'm sorry, we're just going to shut down power when the winds get bad.
Boy, they got a lot of people upset about that one.
They sure do.
Let's move along here.
Okay.
We got another picture coming
We do.
up.
We have a picture of solar arrays. And those arrays are just all over the place in this picture.
That is a very large solar array, or a number of very large solar arrays.
This is from the Philadelphia Inquirer.
Well, Philadelphia launches regional collaborative to tackle climate change and recycling and renewable energy. Basically, it's a good idea.
The Climate Collaborative of Greater Philadelphia, I'm having trouble talking today, was to be a way for local organizations to coordinate efforts on climate change, energy, and recycling. The number of signups was nearly double what was expected. They started this collaborative. I said it right that time, and they were just blown away by the number of organizations that wanted to get into it.
Well, the article doesn't say whether or not that array of solar is part of this program, but it could be because they've got a deal to buy the power used in city-owned buildings from a large-scale solar farm in Adams County, PA.
Okay.
Which is 100 miles west by Harrisburg.
Yep.
Okay. And what's happening in Philadelphia itself is business, industry, and institutions, which include even the Philadelphia Zoo.
Yes.
They want to get in on the action.
They do. You know, it's interesting to hear that because a lot of zoos want to get in on the action with renewable energy. There was a Detroit zoo that we talked about, I think, last year, where they wanted to do that. Okay.
When I was a kid, I lived within a walking distance of the Bronx Zoo.
Did you?
And on Wednesday, it was free.
Ah.
So I visited the zoo a lot. I loved the zoo. It was great. What a great way to spend an afternoon.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
Of course, then if you look at it from the animal standpoint, I think they had a little bit different view of it.
Well, they might have. I think some animals like zoos and some don't.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Okay,
We did have one thing that was interesting, though.
What's that?
There was an island in the Bronx River. The Bronx River goes through the zoo.
Yeah.
And there was an island there that was far enough from land that they could put monkeys out there and not worry about them escaping.
Aha.
So there was an island there, Monkey Island they called it,
Yeah.
where you could, from the shore, see these monkeys almost in their natural habitat.
Okay.
You know, they had trees there, and they're swinging around from trees and running around. It was really, well, a lot better than seeing them in cages.
I believe it. I wonder what kinds of monkeys they had there, because there are monkeys that live in places like Japan where they have cold winters in some places.
I don't know. I don't remember whether they took them in. They must have taken them in for the winter time.
I don't know. I would imagine. Okay, we're up to Friday, October 18th.
Already?
We are.
Wow.
And we have an item from The Guardian.
And we do. Climate crisis will not be discussed at the G7 next year, says who? A Trump official.
The climate crisis will not be formally discussed at the G7 summit in June next year, Donald Trump's acting White House chief of staff told reporters. He announced that the G7 would take place at a golf resort owned by Donald Trump. Well, of course,
Isn't that neat, huh?
Donald Trump has backed off on that one, I think because he was told in no uncertain terms by a huge number of people, you better not do that.
Oh, it's not going to be at the golf
No,
course,
it's not going to be at his golf
Gee, they
course.
should have it, because in another 5 years, it isn't going to be there.
Oh, well, no, one of the things that I've read is that his hotels and things are all losing money.
Are they really?
People aren't staying at them. There are a lot of people who don't want to support Donald Trump, and so they
Well,
won't stay at those
that's
places.
interesting.
And so,
they're
and
boycotting,
now,
basically.
when they complained, you're not allowed to do this. A person is not, an official in the government is not allowed to award himself a contract.
Yeah.
He said, well, wait a minute. I wasn't gonna make any money on this. Well, there are ways of making money and ways of making money.
As they say in the B-grade movies from World War II, VFVs.
VFAs of making you talk. Yes.
Well, let's move up to Friday, October 18th.
We're already at Friday, October 18th, but we are going to go to Savannah.
Thank goodness we are. It's
The
ironic.
Savannah. This is Savannah in
I
Bolivia.
got a quick takeaway from the...
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
It's ironic to ignore sea level rise at an international meeting outside one of the country's most climate vulnerable sites. From weakening regulation on vehicle emissions to blocking warnings about how coastal parks could flood and withdrawing funding for conservation programs, the Trump administration has been consistently ignoring, burying, and undermining climate science.
Donald Trump did something very interesting with the property in Florida, which,
Yeah.
by the way, is, of course, as all of his properties in Florida are threatened by rising
definitely.
seas. But he bought a house for $40 million,
Yeah.
and he put it up for sale for 120 or something
Yeah,
like that.
something like that.
And he had a lot of trouble selling it because it was overtaken by black mold.
Wow.
Yeah. So what happened after a couple of years was
They
that
made black mold illegal.
he sold the house for $110 million and bragged about it like mad. And he sold it to a guy who immediately tore it down because it was, and who was that? He was a very wealthy Russian.
That's interesting. Huh.
I think there's a term for this that, I don't know, I shouldn't go into it. Okay, now we're going to Bolivia where they have savanna.
That's a picture of a savanna.
There's a picture of a savanna. I was pointing at the
And a
monitor.
savanna is just like you see there. It's a mixture of forest and trees.
Yeah, that's what
Forest and
savanna is. It's grassland with trees growing all over the place. And I actually looked it up, and savannas can have a lot of trees on them.
And still be savanna.
And still be savannas, or they can have not
Or no
very
trees,
much.
yeah.
Not very much. Okay.
Yeah, it's the central. There's a big band of savanna in Africa, just below the Sahara.
Yep.
Between the Sahara and the rainforest is savanna.
Yeah.
And there's also a place in Georgia.
That's right. Although I'm not sure why it's. I saw a movie. It was a very bad movie a long time ago, in which some people were out in the desert and they were walking toward a tropical rainforest, and they wanted to get to the tropical rainforest to have water, and they walked across this desert, and then in like 6 feet they came to they came from the desert into the tropical rainforest, nothing in between. I got news for you. There's savanna in between, and it's a lot of savanna. Okay.
Well, the article says planting 1 trillion trees will not halt climate change. I'm not sure I agree with that.
Well, this was, I think, a little bit deceptive, not necessarily intentionally, on the part of whoever wrote the title. This came from a publication called Newswise, and the synopsis is: a group of 46 scientists from around the world, led by Dr. Joseph Veldman, urged caution about plans to address climate change through the massive tree planting. They published a message of concern in the journal Science, urging that care be used not to plant trees in the wrong places.
Well, that's not a bad advice.
It has nothing to do with the number. It has nothing to do with the effectiveness of the number to address climate change. What it says is, if you're going to do this, don't do it there.
Don't do it there. Yeah.
And the place that they're talking about is the savanna, which they said it might look like you could plant a lot of trees there and get a lot of carbon sequestered in the soil, but it doesn't work quite that way. You have to know what you're doing.
Well, from the article, tree planting in the Earth's natural grasslands destroys plant and animal habitat,
Yeah.
and will not sequester enough carbon to compensate for the fossil fuel emissions.
Yes.
Okay, planting trees in the wrong places can actually damage ecosystems, increase wildfire intensity, and exacerbate global warming. So the message is a sound one, really.
I think so. And I think another thing that people should think about is it's not just trees. We've got a lot of places in the United States that were historically wetlands where the Mississippi River, for example, would be a whole lot better easier to deal with if we allowed the areas on the banks of the river to be wetlands.
Yeah.
And as wetlands, they sequester carbon faster than a forest does in some cases.
They do a good job of it.
They certainly do. Okay, that was from Newswise. We have an item up from the BBC.
From the BBC.
Yeah.
U.S. Energy Secretary quits amid Trump inquiry.
Secretary of Energy Rick Perry, who has been drawn into the Trump impeachment inquiry, will resign. President Trump confirmed the former Texas governor's departure. Mr. Perry's exit had been rumored for months, even before he became entangled in the controversy in the Ukraine. Why would
we're going to be hearing a lot about
this whole thing is just blowing up.
It is.
Why in the world would the Secretary of Energy be engaged in this particular controversy in the Ukraine?
Well, according to the article, lawmakers are scrutinizing Perry's role in efforts to pressure Ukraine's president to investigate Joe Biden,
right.
Which, of course, Trump says he didn't do, but which the evidence is coming out that indeed he did.
We had an ambassador to the Ukraine saying that's exactly what happened.
Bingo.
And, I saw a professor of constitutional law talking with, I think it was Anderson Cooper, saying this isn't a smoking gun, this is a smoking howitzer. And he was saying if there was anything in the Constitution that talks about why, the whole business of high crimes, misdemeanors, and so forth, talking about an impeachable offense, this is the perfect example of something that should be impeached, because this was Donald Trump using taxpayer money that he's not supposed to be withholding, and he's withholding it. We're not talking about energy here. We should be talking about energy. But
let's move on.
Clearly, I'm really disturbed about this, and I want to point out, I was a life member of the National Rifle Association, and I resigned because it endorsed Donald Trump, and it was so clear to me that Donald Trump was a con artist who was going to damage our constitutional rights that I just couldn't support an organization that supports him.
You were right on the money, weren't you?
Okay.
Well, it's time for breakfast.
Time for breakfast. Okay.
We're going to put up a picture of breakfast.
We're going to have... What does this have to do with anything? Put it up there so people can see it.
That's a croissant.
What does it have to do with energy? Okay,
well, it's interesting. It is very interesting.
We're up to Saturday, October 19th, and this is from iNews. Croissant
making method leads to breakthrough in sustainable energy storage.
They're going to store energy sustainably better by making it in things that look like croissants.
Well, I'll get into that, but you read the article.
Inspired by croissant making techniques, researchers came up with improved energy storage, according to a study. Having pressed and folded a capacitor covered with plastic film, researchers were able to increase energy storage by a factor of 30.
Well, I had to look up
astonishing.
what they mean here, so I had to figure out how to find out how to make a croissant.
Oh.
Okay. And it's really easy. To make them, you roll the dough into a square.
Yeah.
You butter it and fold up a third of the dough from the bottom, a third of the dough from the top, and then you start rolling it down again.
Yeah.
Okay? And then you do this over and over again.
Yeah.
And they're doing this with basically capacitors.
Yeah.
Which could be analogous to the dough and the butter.
Yeah. And I want to tell people what a capacitor is.
Yeah.
Okay. You walk on a shag carpet,
Okay.
and that makes you a capacitor. A capacitor is a thing that stores
energy.
Electrical energy.
And it gives it up real quick.
And it very often does. You touch somebody on the nose and he goes, ah! Okay, so here we've got capacitors, and capacitors don't have to give up their energy quickly. They can give it up more slowly.
If you have the right kind of circuitry, yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And so what they're talking about doing is storing the energy in a capacitor, which is interesting for a very particular reason, which is you don't have to worry about chemicals with this thing. You don't have to worry about it's dry. Yep. And it doesn't change. The capacitor doesn't change chemically just because you've got electricity stored in it.
Well, it's a kind of storage technology. It's been around for years and years and years.
Yep.
I mean, way back in the days of tube radios.
Yes.
You look at the back of the radio and those tubular things sticking up were capacitors.
Yeah, we're going to see some capacitors later on in the show.
We shall.
Or at least things that look like capacitors.
People are out there looking at old ways to store energy.
Yep.
And bring them up to date. And this is what they're doing here with this one.
You know what this reminds me of is, what is it called? It's called the Cambridge pile, something like the Oxford pile. No, it's the Cheltenham pile. It's a battery, and it's like they don't know what's in it. It's covered with wax or something, and you can't see what's in it.
Huh?
The person who made it didn't record how he made it, although they know kind of what was going on at the time.
This is like an antique thing, isn't
yeah.
it? Yeah,
and it's like possibly a layer of really thin zinc and a layer of paper and a layer of really thin, and you just make that up in a pile.
That would work.
And then what this did was it made a battery. And the guy had the battery operating a pendulum, which
has still been
swings to one
years,
bell where it charges, and then having been charged, it's repelled. So it swings to the other barrel and it discharges. Having been discharged, it's repelled from there. And this thing has been ringing this bell for something like 150 years.
It just keeps going.
It's just one battery. It's like the ever ready.
I have heard of that.
Yeah. Anyway, that's what this reminds me of.
Now let's move along here to the Commonwealth of Virginia.
Yes, let's do that. And this is from the Roanoke.
Which announces the largest renewable energy contract in the nation.
Whoa. This is the Roanoke Star, and I saw a lot of information about this particular thing. I took the Roanoke Star article. It tells what's going on, but there were a lot of other articles that had all kinds of information about this. The Commonwealth of Virginia announced a landmark agreement. It is the largest contract that any state has ever negotiated to buy renewable energy to power the state government. Dominion Energy will supply the state with 420 megawatts of wind and solar power. What do you got to say about that, kiddo?
Well, they've already begun construction of the first Virginia offshore wind project.
Yes.
Okay? And it's going to be 2 6-megawatt wind turbines, each of which is half as big as the wind turbine we talked about earlier in the show.
And at half as big, it's pretty big.
They're still pretty big.
Yeah.
The demonstration project is set to be completed by the end of next year and is the first step toward the development of a 2.6 gigawatt offshore wind resource.
We're talking about stuff that's huge here.
Well, whenever you see giga, it's always something big.
Yes.
But if you want to put it into perspective, in round numbers, a gigawatt is 2 Vermont Yankees.
In round numbers, yeah, that's right. Although, when you're talking about different sources of power, you got to remember the wind doesn't always blow. So you're getting
a gigawatt when the wind is blowing.
You're getting a gigawatt when the wind is blowing, but sometimes it's not blowing all that hard. You know, interestingly, by the way, the wind turbines generally produce power about 98% of the time. But they produce it at a very much lower level than their rated capacity most of the time.
And they mostly produce it at night.
Yeah, well, it makes wind and solar a pretty good match for each other.
Match.
Okay, and the thing that the other articles were saying was Dominion has been standing in the way of people putting solar power on their roofs. It's been doing all kinds of stuff to slow down renewable energy coming in.
What would you call them? the supplier of electricity down there.
Yeah. And
The
so,
utility.
is this a change in Dominion, or is it just kind of a funny thing that
I
happened?
think it's kind of a funny thing.
Okay.
Well, you know, the old model of distributing energy in America is now obsolete.
Oh, boy,
and
is it
we've
ever.
mentioned that on the show.
Yep.
And it's changing, guys. Whether you like it or not, it's changing.
Yeah, it's changing. Well, people don't drive buggies with horses anymore. It's a bit inconvenient.
Absolutely.
And we're in a situation where, just like the cars took over from the horses, the renewable energy is taking over from polluting energy.
And these companies, some of these companies are fighting it. Guess what, guys? You're going to lose.
Yeah, I think so. Okay, we have a picture
nice
of a
picture
wind
coming
farm
up
here, and
here.
this is another item from Renews.
Yeah, let's take a look at this one here. Nice little wind farm there.
Yep, that's in.
Really, that's in South Africa.
I believe that wind farm actually is in South Africa. It was with an article about South Africa, but Enel is all over the world.
Huh?
Enel, if you look at the caption for that, it just says wind farm Enel. And Enel is all over the world. That could just as easily be in Italy.
Well, South Africa plans a 22 gigawatt renewable surge.
Yeah, South Africa is such a problem to follow. South Africa plans to build more than 22 gigawatts of new wind, solar, and storage capacity up to the year 2030. The government's 2019 Integrated Resource Plan says. The plan, which maps out the energy mix for the next 10 years, envisages is what this says, 14.4 gigawatts of new wind, 6 gigawatts of new solar, and 2,088 megawatts, which is just over 2 gigawatts, of storage capacity.
This allocation allows suppliers to commit to local manufacturing of components.
Yeah.
So it's going to contribute directly.
They're going to make
creation.
these in South Africa. They're going to make the components.
Exactly.
Probably not all of them, but
No, but it's a good deal for the South Africans.
South Africa has had a serious problem with renewable energy. So has India, because they have known that they want to go for that, but they've had resistance from parts of the government.
So they got to buy everything, and it costs them more money.
Well, they have to do their planning. I mean, South Africa has been fighting with the question of whether they should do nuclear power.
Yeah.
And at this point, I'd have to say, I think there is no reason to do nuclear power unless you're building a submarine or something.
It's too expensive.
It's too expensive, and there's a bunch of questions I've got about the nuclear power, the nuclear energy.
No, what do you do with the waste?
What do you do with the waste?
They haven't figured that one
But
out
their
yet.
safety analysis is way off the market. It's just incredibly bad. We've had almost 20,000 reactor hours, they call them, of operation since the beginning of nuclear energy. And when those first Vermont Yankee style nuclear reactors were being put in the 1970s, I had a couple of friends who were nuclear engineers, and they were telling me those reactors, there's a 1 in 10,000 chance that they're going to melt down.
That was what I was just about to mention.
Yeah.
If they go bad, there's a good chance they can go real bad.
Yes, they can. But the thing is, what they projected was a 1 in 10,000, which means a 1 in 10,000 chance that any one particular reactor would melt down in any 1 year.
That sounds like tricky numbers.
Well, it's tricky numbers, but that means that in 20,000 reactor years, you would expect 2 meltdowns, except for one thing, and that's only a small part of the reactors that we have were 1 in 10,000. After that, they were 1 in 20,000. Now they're 1 in 50,000. They're talking about 1 in infinity now. No meltdown possible. And basically what you would expect out of all of that is maybe 1 meltdown in 20,000 reactor years, maybe 2. But we've had 11. And that tells me
something's wrong with those numbers.
Something's wrong with those numbers, and I can tell you exactly what it is. Every one of those 11 meltdowns had some sort of human failure. And the human failure numbers were specifically excluded from the calculations.
Oh, were they?
They don't know how to do them.
Yeah.
So they can't account for them. They just don't put them in.
A little bit dishonest, I think.
Well, I don't think it's dishonest. It's
Not
just
intended
that,
to be dishonest, but it's
yeah,
turning out
but
to
the
be.
nuclear industry has had those safety analysis problems. They've had cost problems. They've had problems with getting things done within a time frame. I don't think that's a good way to do things. Anyway, in South Africa, they were looking at nuclear. They were looking at nuclear, and they've been doing that elsewhere.
Well, we
So-
talked about South Africa. We talked about Virginia. Let's talk about New Jersey.
Let's do that. This is STL News.
New Jersey reaches renewable energy milestones with 3 gigawatts of solar installed in the state.
Little bitty New Jersey. It's the size of a postage stamp, and they've got all these
got- yeah,
gigawatts
yeah.
of. Is New Jersey bigger or smaller than Vermont?
It's bigger a little bit.
Is it really?
Yeah, yeah.
I would have guessed it was smaller, but not by much.
Not by much.
They're pretty close.
They're all,
Just imagine 3 gigawatts of solar power installed in Vermont.
is very slightly bigger than New Hampshire.
Yeah, is it? I believe
Yeah,
that.
it is.
Yeah. Okay.
New Jersey, well, I read that.
You did, and I was going to
to
read this. New Jersey Board of Public Utilities announced the state has surpassed 3 gigawatts of solar power and 116,000 solar installations statewide. That includes people's rooftops. New Jersey ranks in the top 10 in the number of residential and business installations among all states.
Well, this is a subdivision, a subheading of this Public Utilities Board has launched a 3-year community solar energy pilot program for low and moderate income households, people who normally couldn't afford solar energy.
Right.
Okay, so it's it looks
know,
pretty helpful.
I used to live in New Jersey, and one thing I found
did
out
too.
was they had the state with the largest number of horses was Texas. The state with the second largest number of horses was New Jersey.
Is that so?
Isn't that
That's
amazing?
interesting. Would have never. I wouldn't bet on that one.
Okay, we have a picture of a tornado.
Certainly looks like a tornado.
It sure does.
Let's look at it. That's a tornado.
That's a tornado. This is from Medill Reports, Chicago.
New NOAA weather prediction system improves severe weather forecast. And we're going to find out what NOAA is.
Well, it's the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. It updated its weather prediction system this June with a climate model that will include data from updated oceanic science, allowing for more accurate climate change-related severe weather forecasting.
Well, they had been ignoring what was happening with the oceans and with the water, and they're realizing it is contributing to weather. Let's look at it.
It's the temperature of the water, I think, is one of the biggest problems we've got.
Oh, yeah, it is.
Okay, we should probably get on. Do you have more about that?
No?
Okay. We have, we're still on Sunday, October 20th. We have an item from Commonwealth Magazine.
It is that. Decarbonizing the economy requires a lot more electricity.
Guess what? Yeah, we've been saying this for a long time. With broad consensus, we must decarbonize our economy. The question is how. A Brattle Group report, which has nothing to do with Brattleboro.
No, it's from Brattle Street in Harvard, in Cambridge, Mass, right
Yeah.
next to Harvard.
Brattle Group report found that, actually they might be named after the same family, I bet there are. Found that
I'm sure they are.
cutting emissions by 80% of 1990 levels by 2050 means demand for electricity will have to grow by roughly twice its twice its current levels.
Big ramp-ups in solar and wind power are needed.
Yeah, that means we're going to be using electricity to heat our houses. We're going to use electricity to drive our cars.
No, basically, that's what this is about.
Yeah, we're going to use electricity to fly our aircraft.
Yep.
You know, very long extension cords. Okay, we're up to Monday, October 21st, and we have an item from The Guardian.
Another
We also
picture,
have a
too.
picture of a solar array on the Isle of May, which is
I
in
looked up
Scotland.
the Isle of May, and it's a little bitty island in the Firth of Forth,
In the Firth of Forth, okay.
which is the bay where Edinburgh is located.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it's in the middle of nowhere. It's a little bitty island. It's a mile long. It's about a half a mile wide.
And it has a lighthouse. You can see it right there.
Yeah.
And those things that look like spots on your TV screen are actually birds. Okay.
Well, I looked at a map of the Isle of May, and that solar array there is enough to power the whole island.
Okay, what do you got for a title?
Renewable energy to expand by 50% in the next 5 years. So the Isle of May has very little to do with this.
Very little. This is not renewable energy on the Isle of May. This is renewable energy globally.
Globally.
Renewable electricity is growing faster globally than expected, and could expand by 50% in the next 5 years. Powered on by solar energy, the International Energy Agency found that solar, wind, and hydropower projects are growing at their fastest rate in 4 years.
Well, so people can see what I look like. I put
Oh, good
myself
idea.
up here.
There you go.
Overall, renewable electricity is expected to grow by 1,200 gigawatts
Gigawatts.
in the next 5 years. That's a lot.
That's a lot.
1,200
Yeah,
gigawatts
it
is a
is.
significant amount of
It's a
energy.
significant amount, yes. Okay, and basically, I'm going to tell you, I think this is just the tip of the iceberg, because the more it grows, the lower the prices are going to be. This is the technology curve at work.
Well, what they're talking about is a renewable energy revolution.
Yeah, it's going to be
which
a revolution.
could end the world's rising demand for oil and coal decades ahead of forecasts from the oil and coal companies.
Yes,
Duh.
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, our next item is from the Sydney Morning Herald.
It is that. It is that. Okay. I might as well put myself up again here. Trading coal for clean energy. BHP takes $1 billion hit at the Chilean mines.
BHP is one of the biggest mining companies in the world. It used to be called BHP Billiton. Australia.
Well, I looked up, I couldn't figure out last week what BHP stood for.
Oh, okay.
And I found out. It's the name of the founder.
Oh, okay.
Which was Bernardinho.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so he turned that into his name.
Ah.
So it's now BHP.
Australia's biggest miner, BHP, is replacing coal-fired power, supplying its 2 copper mining operations in Chile with renewables cutting costs by 20%. BHP said it would take a $780 million US dollars charge, which is 1.14 billion Australian dollars, for the cancellation of its coal contracts.
So it's costing them a lot of money to close the coal mine.
They're canceling the contracts.
Yeah.
They're spending almost $1 billion, well, over $1 billion Australian,
780 million US.
to get out of the contracts.
Yeah.
And they're going to save money because
Yeah.
they're not using coal. What does this tell you?
Well, we've talked about it already. Coal
man.
is dead.
Okay.
We get a nice picture of a car coming up.
We do.
Here.
Yep. And this is another thing that I just found so fascinating. I hate cars, but you know, it's one of those things. Every once in a while, you come across something and you say, "Wow, look at this." This is from Clean Technica.
Well, that car is a Porsche Taycan,
Yep.
and it's an electric car.
Yeah.
And the headline says, "Thanks Tesla, Porsche Taycan EV outperforms its fossil fuel Panamera sibling." So Porsche's making 2 basically identical cars. One's electric and one's gas. And the electric one, which is a little bit cheaper, is a better performance.
Yeah. The Porsche Taycan offers much higher performance compared to its gas-powered Panamera sedan sibling and is less expensive. This applies to other Porsche models as well. Surely some mistake by Porsche? No, perhaps not. It is possibly to compete with Tesla. How long is it going to take people to figure out that they can get a better performing car for less money and it looks just as good and it's quiet?
There's a chart in this what do we call it, website.
Yeah.
That shows you that very graphically, how much these things are costing and what the performance
Yes,
is.
yes. A really interesting article to me. Okay, we're up to Tuesday, October 22nd. We have a picture of a cryogenic battery plant.
That's interesting because it looks to me like the insides of an old-fashioned radio.
Which is why I said we were going to get back to the capacitors. That looks like the inside of the radio that you were talking about earlier. And you notice that those things are very shiny. That's a small model that they've got.
Well, that really is a factory, or a picture of a factory.
It's a picture
Artist
of, I
concept.
think it's an artist concept, and the artist put all those reflections all over everything. Okay, this is from Renews.
Okay, the UK set for the first cryogenic storage. This is interesting.
It is. Highview Power is to construct the UK's first commercial cryogenic energy storage facility at the site of a decommissioned thermal power station in England. The 50 megawatt plant uses liquid air as the storage medium and will be the first of a portfolio of projects in that company that company is planning in the UK. And I should explain how this works. You know that you've got you can have a boiler that drives a turbine or a engine like the old steam engines had. Well, the boiler doesn't have to have water in it. It can have anything that boils, and liquid air boils like mad. So what they're doing is they're compressing air.
Greatly compressing.
Greatly compressing air and cooling it off at the same time, which is a trick because it's going to want to get hot when you compress it. But when it gets cold enough and is under enough pressure, it just turns to liquid. And then you put that liquid in a big bottle and you let it sit there.
Seal that bottle up pretty good.
Well, no, you don't seal it up, I don't think. My bet is that they actually allow them to boil. They insulate them really well.
It could blow up if it gets too hot.
Yeah, and anyway, you put the liquid in there, and when you need power, you pump that liquid air into something that's going to boil.
Well, why are they doing this is because this battery can store energy for weeks.
Yes.
Instead of days.
Yes.
Okay. Long duration gigascale energy storage is necessary to enable baseload renewable energy.
It's just another, we've talked about this many times, about
just another way to do it.
many different ways of doing batteries. Okay, our next item is from Clean Technica.
It is that.
And this is kind of sad, but it's kind of what you'd expect.
Well, this is very much in the news today.
Yes, it is.
Or this week. This is very current. PG&E head says to expect rolling blackouts for the next 10 years.
Pacific Gas and Electric is shutting parts of the California grid down to prevent wildfires during periods of dry, windy weather. The CEO of PG&E told the California Public Utilities Commission that the state will likely see blackouts for another 10 years. They are blacking out the grid on windy days to prevent wildfires because everything is so dry.
And they got hurt
They went into bankruptcy.
Exactly. So the utility grid, this is a good takeaway.
Yeah.
The utility grid as presently constituted is an antiquated concept that could use a serious rethink.
Who said that?
Well, it's from the article, so I don't know who said it, but Clean Technical said it.
Yeah.
Prolonged drought has turned much of the vegetation in the state into tinder.
Yes.
Which ignites easily when it comes in contact with, guess what? Downed power lines.
And the power lines don't even have to be downed. When it's hot out, they sag.
They sag and they touch each other and they get sparks and voila.
You got a fire. That's right. Okay, we should keep going. We've got 4 items here to do in 11 minutes.
We can do that.
We have a picture of the New York skyline. I've been there.
We do that.
I've been on that building.
Oh, yeah.
Who hasn't?
The day I graduated from grade school, I went up to the top.
Did you really?
Yeah.
This is from Renews.
New York advances 316 megawatts battery charge.
The New York Public Service Commission has given approval to LS Power's 316 megawatt Ravenswood energy storage project proposed for New York City. A certificate of public convenience and necessity has been awarded to the project for the plant, which will be built at Long Island City.
Well, this is interesting because Ravenswood has been the site of a fossil fuel plant.
Yes.
Which they closed down.
Yes.
So they got
perfect place.
Absolutely.
They've got the power lines running to it. It's
Everything's there.
Yeah. And nobody who's been living next to a coal burning or gas burning power plant is likely to object to having batteries there.
Well, in July, Con Edison issued requests for proposal for 300 megawatts of battery storage, and this has been a result of that.
Yeah.
And they were ordered to do so by the PF, Public Service Board.
Yeah.
So they've set a target of 3 gigawatts, okay, of storage capacity by 2030,
There you
which
go.
is significant, but they need it down there.
They do, and you know that is going to be one of the things that helps them with with closing down the Indian Point nuclear power plant.
Be very useful.
Very useful.
Well, Indian Point's getting pretty darn old.
It is.
It's pretty obsolete now.
Yep, and it's going to shut down. Okay,
We'll pull this picture up again because
Okay.
when I was a kid, that was a big thing. It was the tallest building in the world. We were quite
Yeah.
proud of that.
Yeah.
But that was never the Empire State Building. It was always the Empire State Building. That was just the way we pronounced it. New York, in case people don't know, calls itself the Empire State.
Yes.
So it wasn't the Empire State Building. It was the Empire State Building.
Yes. And
For
when
whatever
I was a
that's
kid, there used to be a story, and I have no idea whether it's true, that if you went up to the observation deck and threw a penny off, you could kill somebody down below.
Well, technically, I think that's probably true.
Probably true, yeah.
If it hit the person in the right place.
If it hurt yeah. Okay, we
We've
are
got a
up
picture
to
coming up here.
Wednesday, October 23rd. And Wednesday, October 23rd at my blog, by the way, was my 2700th post.
Yep, that's what it says right here.
Yeah, okay. This is a
picture
rendering of a plant,
proposed plant.
that's going to make batteries, and this is from Renews.
Well, storage manufacturer unveils a U.S. battery plant plan.
U.S. company Core Power, that is Kore, is planning to build a lithium-ion battery plant in its home country to support global growth efforts for its energy storage system. The 305,000 square meter plant, and by the way, a square meter is about a little over
10 square feet.
10 square feet, so this is big, is expected to support up to 2,000 jobs by providing batteries for Mark 1 TM storage system.
Well, this Mark TM storage system refers to an existing plant in China,
Yes.
okay, which is used to make a variety of projects, including integrating solar and wind power. Okay,
Right.
so they're making this they have this battery storage plant, which they're using. Now, this plant that they're proposing here matches one they have in China.
Right.
And it's to produce batteries for that facility they've got in China.
Okay.
And it's big.
It's big.
This
There's no
is
question
large.
about it.
The
Those
new
li-
million-dollar square foot facility will have 10 gigawatts of manufacturing capacity.
That means it can produce 10 gigawatts of storage.
Gigawatt hours.
10 gigawatt hours
Yeah.
of batteries per year, which is a huge amount.
That's a good amount of batteries.
Okay, we are up to an item from the
This is the last one.
public news service. No, there's another one after this.
No, that's the last one.
No, there's the tiny shell
Oh,
fossil thing. Okay.
I'm skipping over one.
Public
Okay.
news service.
Absolutely.
There you go.
Historic congressional hearing targets big oil's climate denial. This is happening as we speak.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's going to go on for a while here. The first ever congressional hearing on big oil's history of climate denial aims to show that more than 40 years ago, I got news for you, kid. This is more than 50 years ago. Oil industry research proved that burning fossil fuels harms the environment, but that big oil companies misled the public about it to keep their profits up.
He wouldn't do a thing like that.
No, they wouldn't do that. You know, there were White House staff members who went to the what was it, Edison Electric Institute annual convention and told the people there, we have a problem. Carbon dioxide is going to cause climate change, and it's going to be a catastrophe.
And they did that a long time ago.
That happened when Lyndon Johnson was in the White House.
Ago.
That's a long time
Yeah.
ago. When that was 1965, 66, 67, 68, 69, something like that.
Late 60s, yeah.
So what we're
They knew
talking
about it.
50 years ago, they knew about it.
Very much knew about it.
And they
they've
were
been-
told by the U.S. government. And, you know, there you
Well,
go.
here it is in a nutshell. They're making a product that causes big problems, and they want the public to pay for the problems.
You know, today, in the news, at my blog, we will talk about it next week, there was a thing saying that particulates in the air have
We're
been
not even talking much about them.
increasing
Yeah. not good.
Since Donald Trump took over, and it's costing 9,000 lives a year.
Oh boy.
Now, I got to tell you, science is saying, don't do that, you know? And we've got a government that's saying, you guys are wrong, and they're not giving any reason for doing that. This is, you know, Ayn Rand said, objectivism. They're not being objective, they're being objectivist. And objectivism is based on the subjective idea that money is everything.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you, I think that is what is called
privatizing the profits and socializing the costs.
What is the word? It's indifference. It's gross indifference to human life. It is the thing that takes a death and turns it into a murder. And I think that some of the people who are involved in this could be charged with murder. I really believe that. Okay.
Well, the oil companies maintain a multi-million-dollar publicity campaign to undermine the science, even though they knew better.
They paid $1 million almost to one scientist who was hired to deny that climate change was happening.
Did he also have something to do with cigarettes?
It was the lawyers are the same. They're working on the same thing.
I think that there's one scientist was very important in both of them. Same guy.
Well, you're thinking of a different guy than I am. I'm thinking of a guy who is a physicist, astrophysicist, and he said the climate change is because of the sun. And you know, if you look at the graph that shows climate change, then you look at the graph that shows carbon emissions, they follow each other precisely.
That's a coincidence.
And the solar stuff, you can't find they
I can't say I blame them, but you know.
I can blame them. I can blame them.
That's the way capitalism works. It's
Well,
based
then
on greed.
I got news for you. I voted for Richard Nixon in 1968, and I voted for him in 1972. And I don't want to go through the list of Republicans I voted for, but you know, ultimately, if capitalism is going to, if our choice is be capitalists and die, or do it some other way, we're going to have to do it some other way.
Or die. We might die.
I don't think it's capitalism, to tell you the truth. What's happening in Washington, Donald Trump is not a Republican and he's not a conservative, and the people who are supporting him are not Republicans and they're not conservatives.
Basically, that's true.
Okay, let's go on. Our last item here is from CNN. We have a picture of a coral reef that looks healthy and it's got healthy fish.
That one up there.
And I really kind of admire the way those fish are kind of all parked at that thing so that they're all kind of facing directly away from it, so that they're looking in every direction. They have that thing surrounded. They're there protecting themselves.
I didn't look at it that closely. That's an interesting thing.
What do you got?
Tiny shell fossils reveal how ocean acidification can cause mass extinction.
Ocean acidification caused a mass extinction of marine life a little less than 66 million years ago. Research into tiny shell fossils has shown this could have implications for the current climate crisis, which is also making the oceans more acidic. You know, it took me a little while to figure this out, but basically what they're saying is, yeah, it was a big asteroid that made everything go bad. But the thing that really the asteroid did was when it hit, it wasn't the tsunamis, it wasn't the earthquakes.
It was acidification.
It was acidification of the oceans, and the extinction event started well after that.
It lasted for 1,000 years.
And it lasted for 1,000 years. So this is not,
and
you know...
basically what was happening was the shellfish couldn't grow shells.
Yeah. And you know, this is a very scary thing here that, you know, we could probably...
As it says in the article, the seas are again becoming acidic due this time to an increase in carbon emissions.
Yes. And actually, they're not becoming acidic, they're becoming less alkaline. Because the pH is
relative. But
everything is relative. The pHs were given there, and they're alkaline, but less alkaline is not good.
Yeah.
Okay, we have to say goodbye. Sorry.
Well,
I was having so much fun.
So we could say goodbye.
There we go. Come back next time.
Y'all come back now, yeah.